Hey everybody, I'm John. This is the Midnight Paint and Body channel. In this video, we're going to get back to work on the 1952 Chevy sedan delivery. I'm going to finish up the quarter panel and hopefully move on to doing an inner and outer door bottom. So if you're new to the channel or to this particular project, guys, it's like I said, 52 sedan delivery. So last video we got a bunch of the metal work started. I got the floor pan in on this side, some inner repair, a little bit of repair on the inner post, and yes, it's kind of Frankenstein's, but we're working with what we have, which is 52 Chevy sedan repair panels. Now, obviously, the quarter panel patch panels don't go all the way to the front. The inner and outer rockers were completely wrong. So we're making stuff work. We're working with what we have. So on this video, I want to start off with finishing up this quarter panel. So we're going to get this piece off that's mocked up in place. And we're going to do some repairs on the inner wheelhouse. And then hopefully get this welded back on. Now, I'm going to try and take you guys a little closer along with the actual repairs. I caught a little criticism on the last one for too much talking and not enough showing what I was actually doing. So I always try and, it's hard to kind of make these videos, and you can't record everything because we try and keep them to a watchable length for people, but I will try and focus more on showing you what's actually happening and less of my yapping. So with that said, guys, I'm going to get this panel pulled off and we'll get started. So in the last video, I'd kind of worked myself back to this point, knowing I was going to have to get in here and rebuild this lip. Now, this lip was actually still present. It wasn't all rusted off. I did have to trim this for our crappy new panel. That just my light. The wheel opening on the new panel just wasn't fitting with this. So what we're going to be doing here, this panel here I want to rebuild. So we're going to take this guy off, so it's just welded from the back side all the way along there. We'll make a new one of them. And then we're going to make a piece here for the inner wheel arch so that we have something to weld to with our new panel. So I'm just going to go ahead and try and get this off, and then I'll kind of show you guys how we're going to make this piece first off. So I cut out a piece of 20 gauge sheet metal to make this piece. I just put a quick break in it. Now, I usually use 18 gauge for pretty much anything, but I'm using 20 gauge for this piece, and I'll show you why. Because we are going to be stretching. We're stretching? Yeah, we're stretching this piece. So we're going to be using the shrinker stretcher. So now the one I have, it has two different sets of teeth. It has stretching teeth or shrinking teeth. So I'll kind of show you how this guy works. So you see the teeth inside there. See, it'll clamp down on the metal and then it pushes the metal apart. Hopefully you can see that in there. So the reason we're going to be doing that, because we want to match this wheel opening. Now we only need to go as far as here, so we're just kind of making a piece for there. And what we can use is our repair panel to match it up to. So we want to start stretching this metal So it's going to push apart, and it's eventually going to make this curve. Now, we could go the other way. If we had the shrinking teeth in, we could bend it up that way if we wanted to. So I'm just going to kind of put some marks on here where I want to start stretching it, and we'll just kind of start working it through that machine there a little bit. So kind of a low buck operation here, guys. I've got a crappy used GoPro I got years ago. I don't actually have a tripod, so you're sitting up on top of the 52. Hopefully you can see up there. So let's see if we can start stretching this guy out a bit. If I go to this side, you can see better. So it kind of shows you, hopefully you can kind of see there. So you can see my camera here, how it kind of bites into the metal and it just causes it to bend down. So we're just gonna keep checking our, well, I was going to say keep checking our workpiece, but it looks like I kind of actually nailed it right like that. I'm going to put a little bit more in the end there, but I think I'm going to be trimming it round about there anyway, so. Well, so you can see how well that worked. And now this tool itself, this is just a really inexpensive one. This is a Princess Auto tool, so for you guys in the States, basically like Harbor Freight. It's pretty much the extent of my metalworking tools. I have the shrinker stretcher. I got a shear there, which is actually handy. It just saves on a lot of zip cuts for just cutting pieces of metal. And then of course you saw the sheet metal brake I was using. Again, it's a really basic, inexpensive one, but for my purposes, it has been very, very useful. You can see the bases on all of these tools. We had an old trampoline from when my kids were small, and I've had the metal sitting around for it because I'm a hoarder. And when I started getting these tools, I started just kind of scabbing stands together for them out of the old trampoline stuff. So waste not, want not, I guess. It works. So a little more tweaking on that piece and we'll start fitting it actually to the car. So here's our new piece clamped roughly in place. So I just kind of held it up there with the panel in place and with this piece in place, and then eyeballed from the backside where it needed to be. So what I'm going to do with it now is just do the old cut and butt. So I'm going to just start at one end. I'm going to slice through both pieces of metal, and then I'll be able to remove that back piece, whatever's left, and then what I'll be left with is just doing a nice butt weld. So we'll again just have edge to edge, no overlapped metal in there. So I'm just gonna start doing a bit of cutting, and I'll just kind of tack it, and then I'll refit my outside panel as I go along and see how far we get. All right, so that's actually perfect. If you can see anything in there, but that's going to give us something to clamp this panel to. Okay, that'll just fall out of there for now. Meant to do that. So we'll just drill some holes along the wheel lip, and then we'll be able to spot weld to this new panel. Now the rest of this wheel lip was okay. You can see we still have lots there to weld to. I just had to rebuild this part of it. So I'm gonna finish welding this and just clean this up a little bit, and then we'll move on to making this flap piece, and then we'll coat all of this inner before welding this new piece on. With our wheel lip welded in place, I'm just going to move on to making this kind of splash panel that goes in here. This piece actually wasn't too bad, but it was rusted through just a hair on the bottom, so I figured we'll just kind of make up something new for it. You know, we don't even have to have it exactly the same shape, as long as it fits up to the quarter panel here. And then we'll just kind of round it off on the inside. So, now I don't have a bead roller, so I can't put these beads back in there for strength, but I think it's a small enough piece. By the time we break all the way around the edge, it'll have more than enough strength for what it needs to do. So yeah, I'm going to cut out a piece of sheet metal and we'll start seeing what we can do with that guy. So there's our little splash panel I just made. So basically just hammer and dollied the edge. I did just run the plenishing hammer around the edge just to kind of give it some strength. Then I decided just to put a couple of kind of strips in. I mean, you're not going to see it. It doesn't really matter, but it just gives a little rigidity to the sheet metal. If I had a bead roller, it would be a lot nicer to roll a couple of beads in it, but what do? Don't have one. So, pretty much the end of the day now, guys. I think we'll leave that for now. In the morning, we'll just start trimming this guy up to fit into place. Won't take much. We'll get that welded in, and we'll be moving on to that rear quarter panel piece pretty quick. So I've gone ahead and sort of finished up this piece we made yesterday. So our little splash shield is going to go right about there. So I'm just going to clamp this guy in place and then hang our quarter panel piece back on here, and then I'll be able to make sure this is going to line up properly with our inside wheel lip. And once I'm happy with where it is, I have just punched a bunch of holes in here. So I'll get this guy in place, have it clamped nice and tight, and I'll be able to just plug weld this into place. Now I have been going around as I've been working on it and taking a needle scaler, which is one of these guys here. Basically it's an air hammer with hardened steel needles, and blasting off as much undercoating as I can. Now I will be putting this body on a rotisserie once I have this welding done, and the whole underside, everything will be getting all sandblasted and cleaned up nice. So, you know, this isn't getting left like this, but, I mean, we're not going for full show car underneath, but it's going to be clean and nice for sure. So, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, just clamp this on, hang this quarter on, then I'll bring you guys back for a look. My piece does actually fit pretty nice. It doesn't come right up to this edge. It's more just kind of a splash shield that hangs in there. I do need to just kind of round off that corner down there just a bit so that it's not gonna hit on the body. So that's minor. I'll pop it back out, alter it a little bit, and we'll be ready to weld it in. So basically what I'm doing here is just some rust preventative paint, just areas that I won't really be able to get to. Now, like I said, once this car is on a rotisserie, I'll be sandblasting the whole inside again and the whole underneath and getting everything super clean. But some of these areas that aren't really going to get hit with the blaster, I figure if I just coat them now before I weld the panel over top, it's just going to give a little extra protection. So I need to run into town and pick up some freight. So thought I'd take you guys along for a little cruise. Show you what real Canadian roads are like. So I've got the quarter panel back in place. We've got our splash shield welded in place. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this little filler piece for between the two panels. That's straightforward. It's just a piece of metal with a bend in it. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll move on to getting this all welded up. So I've moved ahead a little bit here, guys. I have welded up the quarter panel piece. I've got it all ground down. So the quarter panel is all welded up. So getting close to the end of the day now, but I think tomorrow we will start on this passenger door, doing a door bottom on it. So see you guys tomorrow. Well, good morning. It's the next day, obviously. A little bit of a late start this morning because I've been out snow plowing since 7 o'clock this morning. Put a little clip there yesterday going for a drive in the snow, but it snowed all night. We got another probably 10 inches after that, so pretty good little dump of snow, but I'm in the shop. It's about 9 now. So yesterday we kind of finished up the quarter panel. So I just gave it a quick little skiff of Duraglass filler over the welds and the quarter. I'll do the rest of the quarter when I get some more going. I just kind of like to seal them up. I took a wire wheel and get clean out right into the welds, as clean as I can possibly get them, and then I figure just by putting that coat of Duraglass on and knocking it off real quick, it'll keep everything sealed up until we get to finishing body work. I mean, the car will need to go back outside for sandblasting. As you can see, I should have epoxied the car right away after I blasted it, and I knew that, but as you can see, we're starting to get a lot of rust back into the pits, which tends to happen. But anyway, I figure this morning we are going to tackle a door. So you can see, obviously, pretty clearly, we need a door bottom on the outside. But then we also have a lot of rot on the inside. Or not a lot, I mean, this car is pretty darn good. But so you can see, it's all separated in there. There's not much left in there. So what we have is this door bottom kit, which is obviously an exterior skin and an interior panel. So hopefully these parts fit a little better than our other parts have been fitting so far, but I'm not going to hold my breath. So it looks like, yeah, so we're going to be completely covering the hinge area. So, oh, for crying out loud. Okay, so, yeah, we're flush there. What the hell? Okay, deep breaths. So, this is obviously way too wide for this. So, from what I understand, this is the same as a 4-door sedan door. And this, because this in this vehicle obviously is a 2-door sedan delivery. So I'm assuming that these door bottoms are for a 2-door sedan, as that's what all these parts were for. Now, of course, the 2-door sedan has bigger doors. So let's have another look at this. So this shouldn't be a problem, as long as we have kind of the same shape. Okay, so it appears we'll be okay there. This is not a problem to shorten this exterior piece. Not a big deal. But are we going to be able to utilize this guy? I'll say that we should be okay with the front there. You see those lines line up. But even if we do this, so we're going to be different with those guys. But it's like our metal's okay here, so I can probably cut below this. And then hopefully just slice this maybe and shorten it. Well, I'm gonna have to get this door off and do a little thinking and see what I can do with this thing. All right, what you saw there, so obviously I cut off the outside skin. I just ground off that edge around there, so we see this is a piece that folds over, so we still have that hanging in there. That doesn't matter right now. So it gives us a look at the inside of our door. And then because this piece has that flange to slip underneath, I just trimmed it out for these areas here. And now that'll just slip right under there. And once we've got that inside panel on, we'll be able to hammer these edges around, but for now those stay like that. And then obviously weld up that seam. So that fit pretty good. So I'm gonna flip this over and get started on the other side here, I guess. So you can see I trimmed out this inside panel, and I have obviously cut it in half because we need to section it. So I think I'm just going to start fitting this end. So I do want to butt weld this, so I'll be cutting this little bit of a flange off of there, and hopefully just fitting this right into the original sheet metal and butting right up. I don't want to have anything overlapped in here. It's going to throw the fit and the tolerances off, I think, if I do it that way. So I think I'm just going to start trimming. Yeah, I'll start trimming this back. I'll mark this inner, and we'll just start piecing her together. So I get this first piece kind of tacked in here, guys. I jumped ahead a little bit. So you can see that it's fitting nice. I'm gonna have to put a little filler piece in there, but that's nothing, just a little scrap. But other than that, I'm happy with that. Now the reason I didn't cut the whole bottom off the door, because I wanted to still be able to see this alignment here, being that we're doing this in two pieces. So that's solid enough that that is gonna stay where it needs to be. You can see that would have butted up with the old metal, but now I'm going to cut this piece, which is obviously way too big. I'll just find out exactly where I'm going to trim this guy, which will be right about there. We'll start cutting the rest of the bottom of the door off. So here's our other piece tacked in place. So that all seems to fit nicely. Like I showed you there, I need to just put a little sliver of metal in there just for a filler piece. Everything else is tight enough to weld. The only spot where we've got doesn't quite fit the shape here, so I'm going to just put a little bit of a cut there and just move that metal in before I weld it, but that's super minor. But I'm not going to really weld any farther than that. I might put a couple more little tacks on. But what we're going to have to do next is move on to this piece. So a bunch of spot welds there to drill out. And we'll get that inner kind of structure piece out of there. Start figuring out where it needs to go in here. We're going to need to know exactly where to drill for the hinge. So probably what I'll do is just see if I can get this door back on the car just off of the top hinge, kind of get it in place, and that'll give me an idea where those holes need to be drilled, and then we can start fitting that reinforcement from there. So I've gone ahead and taken this hinge bracket out of the old door bottom. So I just threw it in my little sandblast cabinet and just dusted all the heavy rust off it and just dusted it with some aerosol primer. Now I did just have this door hung back on the car. First off, I did have to break these welds here and just tilt this bottom just a hair because it was just sticking out a little bit at the front of the rocker. So I just had to do a little adjustment. And then I did line up the hinge, so this is roughly where we want our hinge holes. Now these will be oversized holes anyway because that plate does have some adjustment, so they need to be able to move a little bit. So I'm going to drill those, get this lined up inside, drill some holes for plug welds around about there, and get this guy welded into place. And then we'll put this door shell back on and check our adjustment again. So here's our door bottom welded on fully. So I've, for the most part, cleaned it up. I think what's going to happen now, I'm going to flip it over to clean up the inside of the welds a little bit, and then back on the car again. So make sure we're still maintaining our fits because, you know, I've done a bunch of welding, put a bunch of heat to it, want to make sure nothing is moved. And then we'll be ready to put the outside skin on. So getting close to the end of the day, probably won't be till tomorrow, but you guys will see it when it happens. So here's a quick look with the lip around the bottom hammered over. So I've just put a couple of small spot welds. I typically will like to just do just a couple of small spots just to ensure the skin can't move on there, but I don't see any reason it would. I'm going to wait until I've fitted the door one last time. So, I mean, obviously, you know, some of this stuff, I've got some body work to do on the inside of the door, but that's pretty minor stuff. So from this point, I'm going to flip it back over, finish the welding on the other side, and then fit her back onto the car again. So there's one more big piece of the welding done. So we've got one door welded up solid. So that's basically this whole side of the car, all the welding done. Short of course, the hood and fenders. Now, of course, there is still a mountain of work to be done on this car. I need to do all of this all over again on the other side. Hood and fenders. Then once I get it on the rotisserie, we'll be doing all the undercarriage. So there's going to be some more welding and stuff to do under there. But as always, guys, I want to thank you for watching. And if you can, leave me a comment on the video. You know, I do appreciate the criticisms. If there's anything I can do differently that might make these videos more enjoyable to watch, let me know. Always trying to improve them. I know I'm never going to be the guy making money on YouTube, but I do my best to make the videos to the best of my abilities. So, as always, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you come back and check out the next one.